Hello and welcome back to Look Movie Recaps. Today, we are going to recap a 2021 movie titled Deadlock. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. In the opening scene, a group of delinquent youths are partying with drugs in a house. However, the police were stalking them from outside the house without them knowing. Since the house was quite spacious, Detective Fulbright, who led the raid, ordered two of his men to sneak in through the back door while he and Larry, one of his men, would raid through the front door. The policeman who entered through the back door managed to kill two young men, while one of them managed to escape through the window. Detective Fulbright, who raided through the front door, managed to kill one young man and arrested another named Kyle. However, after checking the house's address, the police realized that they had the wrong address because it turned out that the house was not connected between the front and back. This indicates that the two young men who lived in the front of the house were not their targets, and no drugs were found there. But Detective Fulbright didn't feel the least bit guilty because both boys had guns. Kyle and his brother, who lived in the front of the house, were falsely accused of being drug dealers, and Kyle was thrown into prison. The raid news immediately caught the media's attention and was reported throughout the county. Elsewhere, a man named Ronald Whitlock was seen watching the news of the raid on television. Ronald turns out to be the father of the two young men who lived in the front of the house and knows they are not involved in drug cases. Ronald looks devastated and angry because his son was the victim of a wrongful arrest while his other son was killed because of the negligence of the police. Not long after, two police officers came to Ronald's house to take him to the police station for questioning about the case that happened to his two sons. Ronald, who turned out to be a war veteran, immediately killed the two policemen without thinking because he did not accept the police's arbitrary treatment of his two innocent sons. We are then introduced to Mac, a former Special Forces member. Mac woke up with a heavy head because he was drunk last night. After retiring from the military, Mac works as a welder at a hydroelectric power station. Mac accidentally runs into Detective Fulbright's wife, Paula, who greets him warmly on his way to work. After that, Mac seems jealous to see his ex-girlfriend, Sophia, who is very close to a man named Smith, who is none other than the director of the company where Mac works. Upon entering the office, Mac was immediately teased by his friend Tommy because Mac gets very drunk easily even though he only drinks a little alcohol. It turns out that what made Mac drink to the point of getting drunk was his friend from the security division, Boone. Seeing Mac's arrival, Boone instead tells Mac to go home and take time off so he can rest because he is still not fully recovered from his drunken state. However, Mac insists on working, so Boone seems a little disappointed. Not only Boone, but a man named Cranbrook, the head of security, was displeased to know that Mac chose to stay at work that day. Mac is then greeted by his co-worker, Amy. They seem to be chatting casually before Sophia came and messed up the atmosphere. Mac and Sophia got into an argument, but then Smith came and calmed them down. After that, all the employees were seen doing their respective jobs. Coincidentally, they had a group of high school students who wanted to go on a study tour to learn more about the hydroelectric power plant, where Sophia was assigned to guide them. At the same time, several cars appeared at high speed and barged in by crashing into the fence. The officer on duty at the front gate immediately reported this to Cranbrook, but strangely, Cranbrook did not respond to the report and instead killed his workmates who were nearby. Likewise, Boone killed his co-workers who were on duty with him. It turned out that Boone and Cranbrook had teamed up with Ronald Whitlock to hijack the power plant. Ronald leads the mercenaries and rushes in, taking the workers and high school students hostage. Knowing there was an ambush, Smith and Paula went into hiding and tried to call the police, but Boone soon found out about this, and made her hung up the phone, and then arrested Smith and Paula. Meanwhile, Mac, working on repairing the dam's broken iron frame, realizes something has happened when he sees an unknown man with a gun. With Mac's skills and experience as a former member of the Special Forces, he easily takes down the man and knocks out several of Ronald's henchmen. Elsewhere, Ronald orders his henchmen to bring Smith before him. Ronald then forces Smith to open the water dam. Hearing this, Smith immediately refuses Ronald's request because it would cause flash floods that could endanger the residents living around the dam. But because Ronald threatened Smith, he had no other choice but to obey. Ronald threatened all employees through the monitor screen and said he would drown them if anyone dared to oppose him. After that, Ronald received news that several of his henchmen had been killed by a welder named Mac. However, Boone tells Ronald that Mac is not a random person because he is a former member of the Special Forces. Hearing this, Ronald ordered his henchmen to immediately arrest Mac. Meanwhile, Mac, who was about to hide in a room, accidentally met Tommy, who was already there first. Tommy said that the employees and high school students were being held hostage by the mercenaries, but he didn't know the motive of the hijacking that was going on there. When Mac and Tommy come out of hiding, they are immediately confronted by a group of Ronald's henchmen, engaging in a shootout. Meanwhile, Ronald meets Paula and asks her to call her husband, Detective Fulbright, to come to the place because he was the one who led the raid on the drug case that killed one of Ronald's sons and imprisoned his other son who was innocent. When Detective Fulbright finally arrived at the power plant, he was immediately surrounded by Ronald's henchmen and brought before Ronald. Knowing that Ronald is Kyle's father, Detective Fulbright then apologizes to Ronald and says that what happened to his sons was an accident. Detective Fulbright then offers some money as long as Ronald is willing to free him and his wife, but Ronald is not at all interested in money, because his goal in doing all this is to get revenge. Ronald then kills Detective Fulbright right in front of his wife, who turns out to be pregnant. Paula looks so shocked and devastated by the death of her husband. Ronald then orders his henchmen to dump Detective Fulbright into the dam. On the other hand, Mac and Tommy are working on a plan. To free the hostages, Mac asks Tommy to get the school bus while Mac rescues the hostages. After killing several of Ronald's henchmen, Mac finally finds Sophia and the other hostages. Mac then asks Sophia and the others to hurry as he will get them out of there and head to the bus that Tommy will drive. Sophia initially refuses to go because she feels insecure, but Mac assures Sophia that staying is too risky and very dangerous. After evacuating all the hostages, Mac is surprised by the arrival of Sophia, who apparently chooses to stay with Mac because she doesn't want to leave him. Sophia then advises Mac to ask Cranbrook, the head of security, for help because Sophia thought Cranbrook was not involved with the hijacking. Knowing Mac's arrival, Cranbrook had his guns ready, but apparently, Mac already suspected that Cranbrook was involved in the hijacking, so Mac first shot Cranbrook and killed him. Meanwhile, Ronald orders his henchmen to bring Amy because it turns out that Amy is the younger sister of Larry, a police officer who participated in the raid that arrested and killed Ronald's son. Amy told Ronald that she had known of her brother's crimes against Ronald's sons and apologized for what had happened. Ronald seemed to appreciate Amy's honesty and then asked her to call Larry and ask him to come to the power plant. At the same time, the bus driven by Tommy finally arrived at the police station, and Tommy immediately revealed what had happened to Larry and his partner, a police officer named Kane. Even though Larry already knew what had happened, he still insisted on coming to the power plant alone because he didn't want to endanger his sister's safety. Meanwhile, Kane immediately contacted the NSA and informed them of the hijacking that occurred at the power plant. Knowing this, the NSA immediately held an emergency meeting to draw up a plan to rescue the hostages and fight the hijacking at the power plant. Meanwhile, Mac is seen walking through the power plant facility and meets one of Ronald's henchmen named Gator, who turns out to be Mac's former colleague when he was a member of the Special Forces. Mac and Gator then engage in a fierce duel with bare hands, but in the end, Mac kills Gator with a bullet that hits him straight in the head. Meanwhile, Larry, who came to the power plant, was immediately beaten and forced to confess his crime by Ronald, but because Larry refuses, Ronald kills him. Not long after, Boone informs Ronald that military forces are heading to their location and deploying all of the troops. Hearing this, Ronald ordered Smith to open another dam. With the water level rising, Ronald planned to leave the place and let the hostages drown. However, Boone rejected the plan and asked Ronald to end all this. Feeling disapproved of Boone's words, Ronald then killed him. It didn't take long for the United States military forces to ambush the power plant and kill Ronald's henchmen guarding outside. Mac then asks Sophia to close the dam while he searches for Ronald's whereabouts. After killing Ronald's henchmen, Mac finally finds Ronald's location along with the arrival of military forces who ambushed them. Mac then asks Ronald to surrender because now he is surrounded, but Ronald refused to give up, so he was eventually shot dead. 2 weeks have passed since the incident, and activity at the power plant has returned to normal. Mac is now promoted to head of security and is back in love with Sophia and plans to get married. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.